They are evil and they are greedy. And their services are for sale to the highest bidding tyrant. That's what Google has become. They'll do anything. They'll do anything if the money is there. The Chinese internet is an even greater percentage of the GDP of China. And he said, look at the way the Belt and Road Initiative works. It involves about 60 countries. It's perfectly possible those countries will begin to take on the infrastructure that China has with some loss of freedom. So he's saying they're going to rope these other countries in with their Belt and Road Initiative. And again, it's physical trade. You know, think of the Silk Road type of thing. That's what they're thinking of. They're making inroads into Africa, into the Middle East especially, and into Asia. They want those natural resources. And of course, they're also putting it into Europe. And what he is saying is that because they've got so much money now. Why had they get so much money? Oh, because we allowed them. We sent all the multinational corporations sent their factories over there. They enslaved their people in these factories. But the guys at the top are making phenomenal amounts of money, and they're going to use that as leverage, just like these people at Google, like Eric Schmidt. They're going to use their filthy wealth to take away the freedoms
I don't like that
of these
all,
other 60 countries.
What's going on with
and again, Project Dragonfly, blocking sensitive results, things like peaceful protests, because you don't want to have that. And then turning over the phone numbers to the Chinese government. That's what Google is doing. I reported that yesterday. And how they have their pollution patrol cars, Google Map cars. They're going to be doing that as a pollution patrol here in the United States and in Europe. Funneling that money to organizations that will litigate for more controls on our economy, more controls on your life. But for China, Google will hide information about air quality. That's where your bifurcation is. Not two internets. What it is right now is it's not even two masters. They have one master, and it is China. That's really what Google is about. When we come back, I'm going to prove to you that this is about the election. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It's an information war, and they're losing it. They're going to take out the other side preemptively. We had testimony going back to November 2017. Got a guy who'd worked in the intelligence community as well as in the military saying that very thing. They always talk about how it's a war, don't they? But if we talk about that as a metaphor, we're not allowed to use that metaphor. That is taken literally. And Alex Jones is shut down by Twitter. That's what they did before they pulled him off completely for confronting the Quisling, the statist Quisling that was demanding that InfoWars be taken down, who worked for CNN. Anyway, let's talk about how this is about manipulating the election. I'm going to tell you how.
Come on, you damn thing.
Yesterday altered the right of the political spectrum. And then on issues like mass migration, they saw an even greater presence on Facebook, said a Swedish broadcaster, SVT. They said, we do not know much about reading and reach, but this result gives an indication that immigration critical alternative media in Sweden have become very big. That's why they have to shut it down. It affects elections. Yes, it does. And they know that. You know that. They know that. And so they're just going to make a bold move and censor what you're able to share. And they've got a lot of different strategies to do this. And we'll talk about some of these here in just a moment, how they're going to do this. But why they're doing it is laid out in the most recent election in Sweden. They said users feel more inclined to share alternative media, they said. And this is the example that the Swedish broadcaster, who's part of the establishment media, gave. Said, well, they feel that they're spreading news stories that haven't been seen by the majority of other users. It also might be because they agree. But he goes on to say, well, established media appears a little bit everywhere. So they feel like it doesn't make any sense to share it. Well, they may not agree with it either, which is why they're not sharing it. Because 54% of the Swedes in the survey said the Swedish media doesn't tell the truth about social problems associated with immigration. That's the reason. If you want to know, they're looking at this and they say they're lying. You know, we know what is happening in our communities. And the media and the government are working together and lying to us. So here's the real information. I want to share this with you. So they've got to shut that down. It had a big effect. It had a big effect on the election. As a matter of fact, they said a strong showing by the anti-immigration Sweden Democrats in the elections that were held on September 9th drained away so many votes from the establishment parties that the two main parliamentary blocs were left virtually tied and far short of a governing majority. This is a story from Zero Hedge. Because, folks, establishment parties equal establishment press.
Thanks, Miriam.
They are one and the same thing. Two sides of the same coin. If the establishment press is losing the ear of the people because people don't believe them anymore, and
It'll be on until it goes off.
You really do think you're fooling us? CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC, NPR. You really think that you're fooling us? MSNBC? You're not fooling us. Even in Russia, where they had the Soviet Union, where they had the information so severely restricted that they only had two press organizations. One of them was called Truth. The other one was called News, Izvestia and Pravda. And they said, well, there's no truth in Pravda, there's no news in Izvestia. They knew they were being lied to, even though they didn't have any other alternative sources. They could still talk to each other. And that's the point of social media. You can still talk to each other. They're going to try to stop that. They said the Sweden Democrats won 17.5% of the vote. They emerged as the third largest in the country. Now, this is important. They came in third. That's not what the polls said before the election, however. They said that before the election, a YouGov poll that was published just 4 days before the election showed that the Sweden Democrats, again, this is the conservative party that is concerned about immigration, was at 28.4%. 28.4% instead of the 17.5% that they got. And this is a big deal when you have so many different political parties. They have about a dozen different political parties, so they have to put together a ruling coalition after the election. And so they wound up coming in third place. They said they would have been the largest party in Sweden, but they wound up coming in third place. They said, well, why is that? Well, they said maybe it's because the mainstream media smeared this political party and anybody who was going to vote. Same tactic they did to President Trump. Oh, you're far right. You're racist. You're Nazis, creating a stigma. They would even, in the televised debate,
money,
candidates came out and said, you're a Nazi party. You're a racist party. Usual types of things. But they also invested money to get actually $850,000 of taxpayer money, the ruling party did, to encourage immigrants to vote. And when they did that, in the areas that were controlled by immigrants, 90% of the immigrants, the residents were immigrants. They got 77% of the vote. They said a similar pattern took place in 6 other no-go zones. Sweden, police in Sweden euphemistically refer to these as vulnerable areas. Everybody else says, don't go there. It's controlled by Muslim immigrants, and it's very dangerous. It is vulnerable if you go there. And so when we look at this, those are a couple of factors. They brought focus, just like Google did, focused on these areas of immigrants. And they got 77% of them, unlike here in America. They only got 61%, and that made the difference. And that's what Google was wringing their hands over. We got these people to show up, and we got them to vote, but we only got 61% of them to vote for Hillary. Well, here in Sweden, they got 77% of them to vote. So I said, well, maybe that was what did it. Maybe it was the stigmatizing, or maybe it was just outright fraud. You know, when you do that, again, this poll was conducted 4 days before the election. Did things really change that much? There was a 7% difference. When the American government looks at foreign elections to see if they were honest or not, the American government looks at exit polls versus the official results. If the exit polls and the official results vary by more than 4%, They consider that to be a rigged election, a dishonest election. So here you have a situation 4 days before the election, and you have a loss of 7%. And there wasn't any known event. There wasn't any last-minute scandal like we typically see in American elections that came out that would explain that. It could just be fraud. And we have seen this type of thing happen over and over again. Saw this happen in some previous Brazilian elections. You had the lady who was a communist get elected, and the day before the election, she showed up at a football game, soccer game, we'd say in the U.S., and she was booed. Had to leave. The entire soccer stadium was booing her. The polls were showing that she was losing by double digits. And then on the day of the election, it turned it around, and she won by double digits. And they shut down the exit polling organization. There's only one organization that does the exit polling, same as in the United States. Welcome back. I was just talking about how headline, Sweden, the anti-immigration party becomes kingmaker. And the reason that happened was because alternative media there accounted for 1/3 of Swedish election Facebook shares. Just 1/3. It was more than that here in the United States. That's why they have to make that move. And that's why this is about the election. And it is about controlling what you are allowed to say. This isn't even about freedom of the press as much as it is about your ability to speak what you believe, to share what you believe. It's your free speech, because that is separate and distinct from freedom of the press. But both of them are being attacked right now by the actions of our government and these multinational corporations that have been put in place as tools of control by our government. And if you think that this government that we have here in America is any different in nature or design or long-term plan than the Chinese government, you better wake up. They're just doing it a little bit more gradually, a little bit more covertly for the moment. But the day is coming, and it is already upon us where this is beginning. So as we see that they're making these moves against social media, I want to tell you some of the moves that they're making in Europe, not just here in America. In Europe, they're doing it with legislation already because they don't have anything like the First Amendment that they have to pretend to obey. And they don't want you people here in America to wake up to what's going on because you still got your guns. People in Europe have been pacified. They can't do anything about it. But they don't want you to wake up to what's going on here. They want to keep you deceived until the very last moment. So we look at what's happening here, the fact that the Swedish election was changed by what was done on social media. In Denmark, they have what apparently is a U-turn on multiculturalism, reports RT. They said a new contract with a state broadcaster published by the Danish Ministry of Culture on Tuesday. And they said the contract states that the DR must make it clear that Danish society is based on the principles of, quote, democracy and has its roots in Christianity. Christianity is the basis of our liberal, and I mean that in the sense of tolerant and focused on liberty, of our liberal democracies. It has its origin in Christianity. That's what real tolerance is about. That's what real multiculturalism is about. And when they tell you that in the name of tolerance, they're going to censor people, and in the name of multiculturalism, they're going to censor people, that's what they're imposing is a single, unified culture like in the EU. Europe is a good example of that. Europe had the richest tapestry of different cultures and languages and architecture and art and so forth, and now they're imposing this gray uniformity on Europe. But previously, they said that the broadcaster should, quote, work for the promotion of integration into Danish society. So now they've changed from promote immigration to tell people that we are a democracy, talk about democracy, and talk about its roots in Christianity. That is a big change. We have Viktor Orban and other people in Poland and the Czech Republic and in Italy and in Austria. All these populist movements, how are they getting there? Through the power of the people. People who can see and think and speak freely, and they don't like that. So we're going to get here to the techniques that they're going to use to come after people. But as Zero Hedge pointed out, this is from the Ron Paul Institute. Orban's Moscow visit is a middle finger to the EU after last week's humiliation. And he is also, Viktor Orban from Hungary, is supported by Poland, by the Czech Republic. He recently received the support of the Czech Prime Minister and the Italian Minister of the Interior, Matteo Salvini, and also the Austrian Foreign Minister. And as I point out in the story from the Ron Paul Institute, the striking thing about Orban and his Central European allies is that they are from countries which, Orban puts it, suffered greatly under Russia in the past. And yet, what he did to give them the middle finger, he went to meet with Putin. Why? Because you have people like Macron and Merkel in Germany saying, Russia is the center of everything evil, just as we were being told by the globalist establishment here. And they've suffered under Russia. They're under no illusions that the Russians are perfect. But they also understand that they could be a counter to this European superstate that these other people are creating. The irony, they said, is greater because Orban personally played a key role, one that is often forgotten by historians, a key role in bringing about the end of Soviet rule in Central Europe. His speech that he made in Heroes Square in Budapest, June 16th, 1989, as the Soviet Union was falling, on the occasion of the reburial of the leader of the 1956 uprising, of a person who led a uprising in Hungary in 1956, was the first time that anybody in the Warsaw Pact had publicly called for the withdrawal of Soviet troops. And just as a reminder, NATO was set up as a counter to the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact doesn't exist anymore. All of those countries now belong to NATO. Why do we have NATO? NATO is now engaged in regime change in Syria. And the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. News flash for Nikki Haley, for the Democrats, for all those involved in every form of McCainery, bipartisan McCainery out there. Immigration is not a human right, says the Hungarian leader. And he says the pro-migrant UN officials are spreading lies. And so CNN responds and says, Hungary is a threat to international order. The U.S. must act now. CNN, always, the quislings, the attack dogs of the globalists. They have no shame. But you can always count on CNN to take the lead in these phony opposition movements. That's the role that they fulfill against Trump, against InfoWars, against Hungary, against anybody who fights against the globalist establishment. That is CNN. So Hungary is a threat, and the U.S. must shut them down. And talking about Viktor Orban. Why? Because of that visit. So I hope that Viktor Orban, who has banned George Soros, a Hungarian, they know exactly what George Soros is about. They have banned him and told his non-governmental organization to get out of Hungary. You can go put your headquarters somewhere else. You're not welcome here. Julian Assange summed this up. He said, the generation being born now is the last one that's going to be free. He said this in his last video interview before he was cut off from the outside world by the Ecuadorian embassy. He gave an interview on how technological advances are changing humankind. He said, global surveillance will soon be totally unavoidable. Here's a quote. He said, this generation being born now is the last free generation. You are born, and either immediately or within, say, a year, you are known globally. Globally. Your identity in one form or another, coming as a result of your idiotic parents plastering your name and photographs all over Facebook, or as a result of insurance applications or passport applications, your identity is now known to all the major world players and powers. He said it's going to be impossible for anyone to not be included into global databases that are collected by the governments and these state-like entities that we call corporations. It is fascism. It is the merger of corporations and governments. He goes on to say, very few technically capable people are able to live apart, to choose to live apart, to choose to go their own way. It smells a bit like totalitarianism in some way. In many ways, it does. And as RT comments on this, the capacity to collect and process information about people has been growing exponentially, will continue to grow fast, he went on to say. With advances in applying artificial intelligence to big data, the next logical step is coming. Let's talk about how this looks. You know, we don't have the Soviet Union anymore, but we still have the tactics of totalitarian states. Marine Le Pen must now undergo psychiatric evaluation. Why? Because she posted on social media pictures of things that ISIS had done, and now she's considered to be mentally ill. Such a familiar tactic of totalitarian regimes. You take the opposition and you put them in a mental institution, right? You say they must be crazy. Nobody in their right mind would ever challenge Stalin or Mao or Emmanuel Macron. So Marine Le Pen must be crazy. This is what they said. They have a court finding, as they report in The Local, which is a French website. They say the unusual summoning is in relation to Le Pen having tweeted out gruesome propaganda images from the terror group ISIS. So this is something that ISIS is proud of. You know, they're proud of the fact that they kill people, mutilate their bodies in the process, and they take pictures of it, they pose with it. They're very proud of that. She tweeted that out, and she said, "This is ISIS. You should know your enemy." Oh, but they don't want you to know your enemy. They don't want you to know the people that they are defending, that they want to defend in Syria, that they have armed, that they want to be the Air Force for, that they want to be air support and rocket support for, that they want to have an excuse and are demanding an excuse to go in and attack them with troops if necessary, to defend ISIS and Idlib if necessary, and say, I know there's going to be a gas attack, and we know before this gas attack that we know it's going to happen. We know who's going to do it, and we know that we're going to go in there afterwards. Now, because of that, perhaps there was an agreement with Syria and actually between Russia, who is helping Syria, invited by Syria to help them fight ISIS. That's what we should be doing. But we're not invited in that, and we're not fighting ISIS. We have people like John McCain posing with these people that pose with their mutilated victims, the people that Marine Le Pen put out there. But there has been a stepping down from this offensive going into the last ISIS stronghold of Idlib. Russia has made an agreement with Turkey, and that has, they said because of that, they're now not going to go into Idlib. So it has had its effect. By saying we're going to create a false flag, we're going to use that as pretense to invade Syria, and it's going to be the UK, France, the United States, all of NATO is going to go in there. We're going to create a false flag, and we're going to come, and there's nothing you can do about it. Even though you call us on that, we're still going to do it. So they said, all right, we'll make an agreement with Turkey, and we're not going to have that offensive at the moment. They capitulated. Nevertheless, what is happening in France? And this gives us an indication of where we're going with this social media control. For denouncing the horrors of ISIS by tweets, the justice system has referred me for a psychiatric assessment. How far will they go? She said yesterday. The order calls for the test to be carried out as soon as possible for the psychiatrist to establish whether this leader of the opposition party to Macron is capable of understanding remarks and of answering questions. And as Zero Hedge points out, the court is treating Le Pen as if being conservative is a mental illness. If you are opposed to the establishment government of Macron, you are mentally ill. Same as if you oppose Stalin or Mao. Because she tweeted photos of bodies of innocent people subjected to horrific deaths at the hands of ISIS. She said the ruling felt like a hallucination. And of course, this crackdown is following French President Emmanuel Macron's promise to crack down on fake news so that he could defend democracy. Mm-hmm. And France is doing other things as well. They're taking Google to court. This is something 10 days ago, this news came out. I'll just remind you of this. France is going to court. They're going to the European Court of Justice. They have said that they are going to force Google to flush down the memory hole anything that somebody says that they don't like. And now they're going to the European Court of Justice, and they want the European Court of Justice to say that if the French government tells Google to forget something, that order has to apply globally, not just in France, but globally. So now you have this little globalist, Emmanuel Macron, trying to impose censorship globally from France. You forget that, you delete that, you flush that down the memory hole, and you don't do it just in France, you do it everywhere. France's data regulator is seeking clarification on whether material removed under the right to be forgotten law should only be removed within France, or if it should be delisted on every Google domain. And you have the UK government planning to set up a regulator for the internet. It's reported by BuzzFeed. The UK government is preparing to establish a new internet regulator that would make tech firms liable for content published on their platforms and have the power to sanction companies that fail to take down illegal material. They said that, of course, that also includes hate speech that they don't define, purposely don't define. As I've said before, the vague general term of assault weapon, never defined, but always put out there because it sounds scary. You know, every gun, whenever a liberal sees a gun, that is an assault. It scares them. It frightens them. So that's an assault by definition. But that's really kind of the only definition that they have of that. Hate speech is also equally vague because it is so useful if it is vague. It's so malleable if it's vague. And this legislation is being drafted in the UK. It's due to be announced this winter. They're going to set up a regulatory framework for, listen to this, online social harms. Oh, yes, social harms. We're going to censor you because of social harms. They have a Home Secretary named Sajid Javid and a Cultural Secretary, Jeremy Wright. And they're considering, these conservative UK people are considering the introduction of a mandatory code of practice for social media platforms and a strict set of new rules, such as takedown times, forcing the websites to remove what they call illegal hate speech. So again, they're not going to define what hate speech is, but they are going to define a time frame in which it has to be deleted. Same as France is working on this stuff. And oh, by the way, grab the phone number just like China. They're going to be the next thing. Put this in there. And listen to this. Going back to last year's general election, buried at the back of the Conservative Manifesto was a promise to regulate the internet. It said some people, this is coming from the Conservative Party, quote, some people say that it's not for the government to regulate when it comes to technology and the internet, but we disagree. Wow, that is chilling. That is chilling. So they're going to look at terrorist content, child abuse images, hate speech that they don't define. And they're going to enforce new regulations on non-illegal content and behavior online. Ooh, new regulations on non-illegal behavior and content. They haven't defined what that is. I'm sure that it'll be something that'll be equally useful, like the term hate speech. Something that causes perhaps social harm. Very subjective standards here. The new requirements to assist the police in investigating criminal activity online, they say. Because, you know, they say that, but they don't mean that. We had a rare moment of candor from Michael Hayden, former director of the NSA CIA, as I point out many times. This is not about guilt, he said. This is not about bad people. We're not interested in bad people. We're interested in interesting people. They had legislation like this passed in Germany last year. They required that anything that they labeled as hate speech had to be removed within 24 hours, or they would fine the company 50 million euros. 50 million euros. The German law was opposed strongly by human rights groups. Industry representatives said it would lead to censorship, you think, and unmanageable burdens on smaller websites. And in just the first few months, they shut down a satirical magazine and a political street artist. They had their content blocked as they wanted. That's exactly what they wanted. When you look at this, you have to understand that in the past, what they have done is come after content for copyright, but it would always be instituted by the copyright holders. That's not what they're going to do now. They're going the next step. And so when we look at this type of thing, when we look at this case, the right to be forgotten, that is instituted by somebody who doesn't want to have information about them up. And it went back to a court case in 2014. There was an individual who said there was out-of-date material about him on Google about an unsettled debt, and he wanted that removed. So it was the right to be forgotten. You take off that information because he says he wants it taken off. Now, we've had situations like that with copyright, where the copyright holder would come on and say, you take that information off because I don't want that up there. There's a lot of people who have copyrights on information, and they like the fact that it's up there because it helps what they're doing. But now the government is going to take that over, and they will do that under the right to be forgotten as well. This is the fight that is happening under the EU's new copyright law. And I'm going to tell you how this is going to be the final straw to take down our free speech. All right, folks, shoot, move, and communicate. Those are the tactics that the military uses. Those are tactical measures that they use. You shoot, you move, you communicate. But it's also a strategy. If you can shut down people's ability to shoot, take out the Second Amendment, if you can shut down their ability to move, and we don't have any amendment that protects that, or their ability to communicate, the First Amendment. And here in America, we're not having legal structures, but we can see where this is headed. If you can take down people's ability to communicate, their ability to fight, and their ability to move, you control them. And that's exactly what they want to do. And they want to lock us down in the cities where we can't move, can't communicate, and can't shoot. They want to do that within 11 to 12 years. That's their time frame. Every time you look around, they come up with the same numbers. Oh, the robots will have your jobs by 2028, by 2025. They'll have this economic sector. They'll have that economic sector. You won't have your car anymore. You think you're going to have your gun in the cities when they lock you down? Cities are always the worst places for having the right to protect yourself. But let's finish up with this, what they are doing in the EU. Again, the strategy right now is this new copyright law that many people believe is going to essentially ban memes across Europe. This is how extreme it's going to be. As one editorial from RT says, it's good to share, but the European Parliament clearly doesn't think so. See, your speech, your free speech is about your ability to share. As I've said before, freedom of the press is violated when they shut down InfoWars. Your free speech is violated when they shut down your ability to share InfoWars, or to share Breitbart, or to share WND, or Gateway Pundit, or you name it, any number of conservative news organizations. They don't like your content, and they've got the Southern Poverty Law Center vetting your content. It might be too Christian. It might be too nationalistic, too American for them, and so they'll shut it down. And so what is the technique? They said they're going to shift the responsibility for the uploading of content, policing it for copyright stuff. That's always been done by the copyright holders. Now they're going to shift that responsibility to the internet service or the websites themselves and say, we're going to go right after the websites. And we're going to police that. Not the copyright holders, the government will police it. They're going to use this as an excuse to ban content. As this editorial points out, many people who hold copyrights that are infringed on in a minor way, many people don't bother to do this. They're happy to see their material uploaded to sites like YouTube. They know that it promotes the artist's work. They know that it boosts sales. And so they allow that to happen. A good example of this is It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life was a failure at the box office when it first came out. Never made any money. It's become a classic. Why did it become a classic? Because the copyright was allowed to expire. It was such an unknown, unprofitable movie that it just kind of fell through the cracks as movie studios bought other movie studios and their portfolio changed hands multiple times. It didn't renew the copyright. And so for a number of years, it was in the public domain. And Ted Turner, when he had the Superstation in the early days of cable television, in the 80s and 90s, he played it all the time, and it became a Christmas classic. Then it became valuable. And at that point, the studio that supposedly had originally owned it, that allowed that to go, they renewed the copyright with a little bit of a devious tactic. They came back and said, well, you know, the copyright for the movie has expired, but there was a script for the movie. Well, there's a script for every movie. But they said there was a script, and that's a written piece of work. And so therefore, since this is derived from a written piece of work, a script, we can now get that movie copyright back. So that was a specious argument, if ever there was. But there was nobody on the other side to argue against it. They had very well-paid lawyers who were working for the movie studio that wanted that very valuable copyright back, and nobody to argue, keep it in the public domain. And I'll tell you what happened with that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We see France saying that Marine Le Pen has now been declared insane and she has to get psychological treatment because she tweeted out a picture of ISIS bragging about the atrocities that they had committed. And she said, this is ISIS. This is what these people are really about. This is why you need to be concerned about this. And of course, the French government, the British government, NATO, the United States all want to go to war to protect ISIS in Syria. We've been doing that for quite some time. So they say, you must be crazy if you oppose our allies, ISIS. And they're going to make her go for psychological treatment. This is the kind of tyranny, Soviet-style tyranny, that is coming to the West. And as part of this, France is also taking the lead to try to flush things down the memory hole, saying that they're not going to allow this right to be forgotten. They're not going to allow that just to be done in France. If they find that something needs to be forgotten in France, they're going to require that Google forget it everywhere. Flush it down the memory hole everywhere. And we see the copyrights now going this way as well. And this is the way that the right to be forgotten is going to go. The right to be forgotten now is coming from an individual, but it's going to come from the government. Just as these new EU copyright laws being proposed are coming from the government, not from the copyright holder. As I said at the top of the hour, you take the case of It's a Wonderful Life. The copyright expired. It became valuable because it was in the public domain. Then they tried to reassert their copyright law on dubious, false claims of saying, well, because we had a script and the movie was based on a script, now we can, even though the movie copyright expired, we can now reassert this based on the written work, the script. And they were able to do that because nobody was arguing the other side of that. But it does make things more valuable. Now, the way that this plays into the political sphere is I used some clips of that. I've talked about this before. It's a Wonderful Lie, where I took a couple of short clips. The entire video, I think, was only maybe about 5 minutes or so, where I talked about the creation of the Federal Reserve. I did it on the 100th anniversary of the creation of the Federal Reserve in 2013, in December. Because it was done at Christmas time, I thought it would be a good tie-in. And because there were phony runs on the bank that were done by the villain in the movie Potter, very much like J.P. Morgan did. And so I talked about that. I drew the parallels to it. I took a couple of short clips from the movie. And Google kept shutting it down based on copyright claims in the United States, because the United States is the only place where they recognize the copyright for It's a Wonderful Life. Nevertheless, where did I get those clips? I got those clips from the entire movie that had been up on YouTube for years, had over 1 million views, and it remained up even though they kept taking down my political commentary that was based on fair use. There you can see a little bit of the clips there. I talked about how money values had changed in it. I talked about runs on the bank and so forth in it. They didn't want that information out there about the Federal Reserve, so they used this phony claim of copyright protection. And that is now what the EU is demanding. That's going to be their way that they assert control over political dissent. As Zero Hedge points out, new EU copyright law could force online platforms to ban memes across Europe. A new law could be nothing short of revolutionary in terms of lasting impact on the internet, on political speech and discourse, and the potential for censorship. Soon, entirely legal content will be caught in the law's dragnet. So even though we have the concept here in the United States of fair use, which, of course, Google arbitrarily violated in my particular case. They did it for 6 months, and then after that, they just said, all right, and they put it back up, made it available. Really strange. Other people would put it up, they would shut them down. Every time they get up to about 12,000 views, they'd shut it down. And then after 6 months, they just left it up until they decided that they would shut down everything that I did. For no reason at all. Never got a reason or a video. They just shut down everything in the middle of a broadcast. And all of my archives that I had other places. But soon, entirely legal content will be caught in the law's dragnet. And if you think it's going to just stay in Europe, watch this court decision. Is the European Court going to give itself power over Google and demand that if they say that something has to be taken down because it needs to be a right to be forgotten, or because they say that it's a copyright violation, then they're going to demand that that be taken down everywhere by Google. And Google is just so happy to comply because it's about the money. Now, like I said, the master that they serve in China is ka-ching, cash register sound. The European Union's directive on copyright and the digital single market is intended to be an update of the existing copyright laws for social media and the internet. It's been dubbed the link tax and also called the meme ban due to the likely potential that internet memes could be banned across Europe. Images, memes, information could be forced to require users to pass all content through an upload filter first. Again, everything through a central location, central control. The same thing we saw with the Apple Store, right? Apple wants to maintain centralized control over everything in their App Store. They decide that they don't want you to see the InfoWars app, so they take it down from their centralized control. According to Wired magazine, they say it sounds an awful lot like they're asking platform owners to use automated filters to scan every piece of upload content and to stop anything that might violate copyright from being uploaded. And of course, they will come back and say, what, our hands are tied? We're just doing what the government wants us to do. They got massive fines in there. When in reality, it also fits their political bias as well. But they're more than happy to comply. And they're not going to fight this because they agree that they want this stuff down as well. They're on the same page politically with these tyrants. No one is sure whether memes, which are often based on copyrighted images, will fall afoul of these laws. And then as we look at this, we see that Facebook is planning a war room and artificial intelligence software so that they can prevent election meddling ahead of the midterms. No, so that they can meddle themselves. This war room, this artificial intelligence software that Facebook is putting in there, that the purpose of it is to meddle. They're not going to prevent meddling in there. Again, if you don't know the origins of Facebook, it may just be a coincidence that on February the 4th, 2004, the day that they gave a name to the Facebook project, they called it Facebook, that same day, DARPA shut down their LifeLog project, which would do exactly the same thing that Facebook does, keep a record of everything that you do. A permanent record on the internet that can be scraped by the government or can be sold to individuals for money. Yeah, if you don't know that, if you don't know the origins of Facebook, if you don't know how they have worked with the Atlantic Council on all this phony Russia this, Russia that stuff, and to censor and control social media, I don't know what else I can tell you. I've mentioned it many times. Apparently Facebook, says Zero Hedge, apparently Facebook thinks it's the U.S. military or a NATO command center, or perhaps its millennial employees want to relive the 1980 cult classic War Games movie. Well, again, maybe Zero Hedge doesn't understand because Facebook is associated with the U.S. military. It is associated with NATO. It is associated with the Atlantic Council. They've even given money to the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council gave them money to get started, and they've returned the favor. And they do exactly what the Atlantic Council wants them to do, pushing this nonsense, this intervention, this warmongering attacks and narratives that they have. And so what they're saying is Facebook is saying, quote, we're setting up a war room in Menlo Park for the Brazil and the U.S. elections. Ooh, that should concern you. It's going to serve as a command center so we can make real-time decisions as needed. This Facebook says it's still in the procession of building their war room. Preventing election interference on Facebook has been one of the biggest cross-team efforts the company has seen. No, their censorship of conservative media, of what you say and share, is already interfering in the election. And they're using artificial intelligence to determine and to find and to shut down people. We've identified and removed fake accounts ahead of the election in France and Germany and Alabama, Mexico, and Brazil. And we found and taken down foreign influence campaigns from Russia and Iran attempting to interfere in the U.S., UK, Middle East, and elsewhere. Interesting. NPR is talking about hacks and security gaps and the problem of electronic voting machines. And it is almost like a satire site. because all they see is Russia, 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 when the real problem is us. We'll be right back. Well, still haven't gotten to the Kavanaugh news, the updates, and again, it's at this point, it's largely a soap opera. I'm sure you understand what's behind this. It's important for us to talk about the due process. It's important for us to talk about the identity politics, the feminist war, but it is not at the center of what is happening right now. I want to tell you what Bill Gates says is his biggest fear about what's coming next for the world. He doesn't share the same view of the world as I do, of course. And I want to say one more thing before we move on, and that is NPR's article about hacks, security gaps, and oligarchs. The business of voting comes under scrutiny. And they're talking about the electronic voting machines. Of course, the biggest manufacturer of voting equipment in the U.S. is a company called Election Systems and Software, ES&S. Typically how they're referred to. And they say it's been a couple of tough years for voting. Listen to the way that NPR rolls this out and how they misdirect the problem. It's been a couple of years that have been tough for the business of voting. There's that state that discovered a Russian oligarch now finances the company that hosts its voting data. Then there's the company that manufactures and services voter registration software in 8 states, found itself hacked by a Russian operatives. Again, when we look at this, and we're talking about the Russian oligarch that has financing in a company, you don't want to take a look at how the CIA, the NSA, DARPA, the Pentagon finance these companies that are running social media. You don't want to take a look at that? You don't want to take a look at this CEO of Facebook, Zuckerberg, who has this fixation with Caesar Augustus? That's a story that came out about 10 days ago. Mark Zuckerberg's obsession with ancient Roman emperor. You know, he said, well, we went on our honeymoon and went to Italy, and my wife thought that I was totally obsessed. She was making fun of me, saying that there were 3 people on the honeymoon, me, her, and Augustus. Even named one of his daughters, one of his kids, Augusta, female, right? And so this is a guy, he's not necessarily a CEO, unless a CEO represents Caesar, emperor, and oligarch. That's the way this guy sees himself. And maybe that's where he got the idea for the thumbs up. You know, it's a Caesar Augustus thing. Thumbs up, okay. Thumbs down, you're dead. And he wants to have that power. They're going to have that power. They're setting up their war room to control the election. That kind of oligarch you're supposed to be concerned about. You should be concerned about that. They're going to tell us that $100,000 in ads on Facebook rigged the election, but the Caesar emperor oligarch who runs Facebook doesn't affect the election when he controls the entire site? And they just have to accuse somebody on the other side of the political spectrum of having hate speech because they believe in something like traditional marriage between one man and one woman. As I've said before, even in Greece, where homosexuality was widely practiced and tolerated, they didn't have homosexual marriage. No Western civilization, Christian or otherwise, has ever embraced that. But now, if you say anything against that, you're shut down for hate speech. And so they're looking at this. They don't care about the fact that when they want to talk about a Russian oligarch was found on financing, part of a company that finances and starts one of these election voting machine things. Go back to look at the very first electronic voting machine company, Smartmatic. Smartmatic began in Venezuela. It was created by some friends of Hugo Chavez. And they helped him. They created these electronic voting machines just so they could rig the elections in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez. And then Smartmatic got involved in elections rigging in Brazil and in Mexico and in the Philippines and in the United States, extending this kind of corruption. Now they have broken with Venezuela. And to get their creds up, they pointed to the last election in Venezuela and said, look, there's rigging of the electronic voting in Venezuela. Or take a look if you're concerned about people hacking Russian operatives. How about Jay Johnson, who hacked into Homeland Security, had Homeland Security that he was heading, hacking into state boards of election? Oh, don't pay attention to that. And NPR doesn't talk about that. It's just Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia. So they said Bike Grid is financed by somebody who is connected to a Russian oligarch, Vladimir Putin. But don't pay any attention to DARPA. Don't pay any attention to Smartmatic's origins. Don't pay any attention to all the elections that they know have been rigged. And they know that because, again, as I said, 4% difference between the exit polls and the official results, they say it's rigged. That's why you will never see that reported here. They never report exit poll results here in the United States. You may think that they do, but all you get is a demographic cross-tabulation. How many people of this race voted for that candidate versus people of a different race voting for that other candidate? Or they do it by sex, or they do it by urban versus rural. But they'll never come in and say, the total number of people that said that they voted for candidate A was this, and the total number of people that voted, according to the exit polls, for candidate B was this, because they don't want you to see if that difference is too large. That's the tactic of a crooked election, and that's what they want out of these things. Who would have thought, says one person, who would have thought when we found out that Russians were involved in financing of this? Who would have thought, I mean, we were obviously very cyber aware. We were doing all the best practices for IT systems. That who would have thought? That's right out of a Tom Clancy novel, right? Oh, yeah, it's right out of a Tom Clancy novel. Homeland Security would do this. And they're talking about a NSA document leaked last year. The Intercept detailed how Russian operatives hacked a Florida election vendor, VR Systems. Again, if you look at that, as the people were looking at it, they said that that was for the purpose of getting identities to be sold on the black market. More than 50% of registered voters in the U.S. vote on ES&S equipment. A company like ES&S could provide a more appealing target because its equipment is used in 41 states. But there's no evidence of a successful attack against the company. Don't ever be concerned about the election being hacked. Not a possibility. I always want to tell you, not a possibility. And the NSA says that security breaches of hacking tools have affected their ability to do their job because the NSA can't protect themselves. So how are these electronic voting machine companies going to protect themselves? Electronic voting machine companies that have already been involved in rigging elections. Pentagon's been hacked. The CIA's been hacked, had their tools stole, Vault 7, where they can make it look like they're anybody that they want to. Yet, don't worry, nobody's going to hack the electronic voting machines. The only way, the people who look at this, the people who ran DEF CON and the Black Hat Conference in Vegas about a month and a half ago, said the only way you're going to have honest elections is to go back, even a possibility of that, is to go back to paper ballots and human beings and people observing other people. Even then, it's very difficult, as we've seen. But the electronic voting system and controlling the internet and controlling social media and censoring what people have to say, this is a pattern for complete control. Now, when we come back, I've got some breaking news about more attacks from Silicon Valley oligarchs against InfoWars. They're not stopping. They've got a new attack, a new stream of attack that's just broken on InfoWars. PayPal has banned InfoWars after they were lobbied by a Soros-funded group. We'll have that information when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Just as I mentioned before we're going to break, we now have breaking news that PayPal has banned InfoWars after they were lobbied by a Soros-funded group. This is an article that's up on Infowars.com, just been put up by Paul Joseph Watson. PayPal has claimed that InfoWars violated their acceptable use policy because we promoted hate and discriminatory intolerance against certain communities and religions. But of course, there were no specific examples given. Off the record, we have been told that it was criticism of Islam and opposition to transgenderism being taught to children in schools were the two examples of hate. So you must not criticize Islam. You know, I mean, Marine, obviously we're insane, right? That's the standard for Marine Le Pen. She's now been ordered into psychiatric treatment because she criticized ISIS. I mean, that's the same as criticizing John McCain, the guy that was their best friend, that has been helping them since the very beginning when they were just called the Mujahideen. Supposedly, they were our enemies for a while there as Al-Qaeda, but I'm not so convinced of that either. But then they became our enemies again with ISIS. Oh, but wait, Why is John McCain there handing them weapons and posing pictures with them? But you don't criticize Islam. And you don't criticize the idea that we would take, that would sexualize children. Folks, it's not even reasonable to sexualize these children in kindergarten with any kind of sexual education, let alone the kind of mental illness, which is what pediatric societies have said in the United States, that it is mental illness that they're manipulating these kids. And why are they doing this? Because they want the idea that if children can choose their sex, what sex they want to be in kindergarten, then of course, if they can make those kind of mature decisions, then they can also make the decision to have sex. It's all about setting up the foundation for pedophilia. Because if you can decide what sex you are, then you can decide if you want to have sex. That's what this is really about, fundamentally. And that's what these perverts are about. So you must not say anything about transgenderism. Don't make fun of any of that. That is a sacred cow of the globalists, that and Islam. PayPal representative said they were giving InfoWars 10 days to switch payment processors, after which all services will be terminated. And it was handed down just weeks after George Soros-funded group Right Wing Watch published an article demanding that PayPal terminate its agreement. And that sounds familiar, doesn't it? As Paul points out in the article here, we had people going on Capitol Hill. We had Congressman Ted Deutsch demanding to know why Facebook and YouTube hadn't shut us down already. Why is that InfoWars stuff up there? We'll talk about that later privately, Senator or Congressman. Can we talk about that privately? We're going to do it. We'll take it down, and they did. Took it down shortly. And so you had this George Soros-funded group, Right Wing Watch. Here is how they are tied in. Right Wing Watch is owned by People for the American Way. You've heard of them before. People for the American Way is funded by George Soros's Open Society initiative. And so they began a campaign. They published an article demanding that PayPal terminate its agreement with InfoWars for, quote, egregious violations of the platform's own terms of services. And yet, Right Wing Watch, as Watson points out, routinely violates the copyright of people by uploading entire sections of other people's videos to YouTube without any pretense of fair use. In other words, they're not commenting on it. They're not putting it up and saying, look at this, Alex Jones said this, and this is why we disagree with that, and so forth. No, they just put up our entire video. Now that is a violation of copyright. I was just talking about how my comments comparing the creation of the Federal Reserve and the corruption in our banking system and monetary system, I used a couple of clips under fair use, very short part of the video, called it It's a Wonderful Lie. So I took some stuff from It's a Wonderful Life, and they shut that down. That was fair use, however. But Right Wing Watch is not doing that. They're just taking the entire video and putting it up. And of course, YouTube didn't have any problem with the entire movie being put up and viewed over 1 million times. They just had a problem with my political commentary about the Federal Reserve System and our corrupt banking system, because they're a part of that. And here's another example of the corrupt banking system. PayPal and MasterCard being used to shut down people that they don't like. And we're not the only ones they're going to do this to. We've already been told, we were warned about this in advance, says Paul in the article. We were warned that they were going to do this to InfoWars, and we were told that we are the first in line. The next ones coming up are going to be people like the NRA and others that they're going to stop processing payments for. We've already seen many bankers and banking companies say, if you sell guns, we're not going to let you, as a retailer even, we're not going to give you banking services. You're not going to do business with us, and so forth. This is the kind of fascism, corporate fascism, that is rolling out here in America. Censorship. And I've said before, I have seen this before. I have seen this model applied before, and it was the so-called free press here in America that was being used to do that. In North Carolina, when I worked with the Libertarian Party, we would work very hard. We would have to go through all kinds of hoops to get on the ballot that the Republicans and Democrats never had to do. Never had to do. They were always guaranteed a position on the ballot. But you would have to go through and collect signatures and do all this other kind of stuff, spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money doing that. Once you got those signatures validated, you had to pay for it. You get on the ballot. but they wouldn't let you in the debate. And the way they kept you out of the debate was to hand it over to the Press Association in North Carolina. And the Press Association would tell you that you could not be a third party in that debate. And this is exactly what's happening here. The censorship is coming from the Republicans and the Democrats. It's coming from the politicians. And they're pretending that it's coming from these private companies, just like they pretended that the censorship in the political debates was coming from the Press Association that was running the debate. They always use that. They use that as a glove. Watson also points out that Jeff Bezos' own political blog, The Washington Post, and again, when you look at the amount of money that this guy is making, it's equivalent to what you would, what he paid for The Washington Post would be about what you make in 30 hours if you make the median family income. And so for what he earned in 30 hours, he was able to buy this leverage of The Washington Post, because even though it's not a good paper, it has a lot of leverage in Washington. And it's been used as a weapon. We see it being used as a weapon all the time. It's been used as a weapon for a very long time. So they published an article less than 2 weeks ago. And in that, the Washington Post was complaining as Alex Jones rails against big tech, his InfoWars store still thrives online, has a high rate of sales, and it is using PayPal. Oh, guess what? Hint, hint. Take down PayPal. And so this is nothing other than what I've been talking about this entire show so far. It's where we started, isn't it? Come full circle. Back to the Chinese style of social credit. That's what Watson put in the report. I didn't even know about this when I started talking about that. That is my biggest fear. I'll talk about the Kavanaugh hearings when we come back. I don't want to ignore that completely. I have something to say about that. But this is where this comes back, folks. If we don't understand how free speech is being taken away from us, how we're having these same companies that are shutting down your free speech and our freedom of the press at the same time, and those are different things, and then using the internet to surveil everything that we do. At the same time, they're applying these social credit standings to us. You've got Apple, you got Facebook, you got Google out there doing the same thing to you, just like they're doing in China. They're rating your trustworthiness based on your posts. You don't like children being sexualized? You don't like the fantasy, mental illness being pushed on them, that they can make their decisions about what sex they are, so that these perverts can have sex with them and say it's not a crime? You're next. All of you are next. Stay with us. Be right back. Welcome back. I just told you that in the last segment, PayPal is banning InfoWars. No specific examples of why they said we are hateful. We promote hate and discriminatory intolerance against certain communities and religions. What religion would that be? Unofficially, we've been told that's Islam. You're not allowed to criticize Islam. And we've also been told unofficially that it is our opposition to pushing gender fluidity on children in schools. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. Not repentant about that. But if you want to know where this censorship is headed, as is being imposed by banks, by the largest corporations the world has ever seen out of Silicon Valley, that's where it's going. And so if you want to support us, I'll tell you about some of the products that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. We'll find some way that we can process payments. You know, we created these stores and sell this stuff independently because we didn't want to be captive to advertising boycotts. But they'll do anything to take us down. They don't like us talking directly to you and laying out, as I have for this entire program, what this pattern of tyranny is ultimately about. Because this is exactly what was laid out by Zbigniew Brzezinski 48 years ago, the technocratic tyranny. And it's going to be less free. It's going to be a gradual process, but we're going to get there. And they're getting there right now. But if you want to support us, I'll tell you, those of you who are listeners to this program, we have a special just for you. We have 15% off the ProPure King water filter. That's the big gravity feed water filter. They're made by ProPure. You can get 15% off with the code REALNEWS. Just use the code REALNEWS at checkout to get 15% off the ProPure King water filtration system. You can also see a lot of other preparedness products there because September is Preparedness Month. We've got a lot of new food, water filtration, seed, and accessory specials to help you prepare. We also have some big savings, some big sales on Super Male Vitality, Super Female Vitality, and Bod Ease. All of those, 50% off. And of course, Bod Ease is our popular turmeric formula. It also has some other ingredients in it that help your body to assimilate the turmeric. And turmeric is very, very effective at fighting inflammation. And you typically will find that in almost any chronic disease, you'll find inflammation. Turmeric is a natural ingredient. That's what we sell here. We sell natural, organic ingredients, and we sell them at a great price. We've got 50% off of that, 50% off the Super Male and Female Vitality, as I said, and our final run of Survival Shield X2. Nascent iodine, we have that 25% off while supplies last. I want to take a look at the, finally, before we get into the Kavanaugh hearing, one more comment from Bill Gates. This came from Yahoo a couple of days ago. Bill Gates, my biggest fear is about what's coming next for this world. And he says, the honeymoon period for tech is over. Yeah, I would say so. All this idea that, oh, come on in, it's all free. Isn't this wonderful? Come on in to the ghetto. Everything is free. And then they close the gates behind you. And now the controls are coming. And he says, we've got to start regulating tech companies. No, they're not going to regulate tech companies. They're going to use tech companies as their regulators. And again, this is a pattern that we've always seen from empires. What did the British Empire do when they went into India, right? They had the British at the very top, but they had this oppressive civil service that they used to rule the country. And at every other level, it was filled with people from India. And they were doing the regulation. You didn't see the hidden hand behind all this. You just saw other people that were like you, that were regulating you for the purpose of the British Empire. That's what we're seeing. We're not seeing the real hand that's going on with this. As I said, most Americans don't really understand that what is being imposed on us is a technocratic tyranny that was written about by Brzezinski, the gradual appearance of a more controlled society dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values, unrestrained by the law. Soon, it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen, maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Zbigniew Brzezinski, 1970, 48 years ago, and now we see it. And Bill Gates is saying, that's it. You know, it's coming. The honeymoon is over. Get ready for the technocratic tyranny. And it's going to come from the tech companies. And they're going to pretend that the tech companies are being regulated by the government. But it is a public-private partnership, just like a toll road, just like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, just like the Transatlantic Partnership. It's a public-private partnership for control and for profits. He said, it's up to governments to understand what things should be regulated. Governments will decide, said Bill Gates. Wait a minute, I thought we had a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, right? Didn't we establish in the Declaration of Independence, didn't we say that we have rights, inalienable rights, like free speech, that are given to us by God? We possess those because we are humans, and that we create governments to protect those rights. They don't decide which rights we're going to be allowed to have. Yeah, they're going to tell you that you're privileged, and because you're privileged, you don't have any rights. You got privileges that they grant. And because you're privileged, you need to get those privileges taken away. So he says it's up to the governments to understand what should be regulated. The governments will decide. Just like families decide what the rules are for your kids, governments have to really get educated on these things. Yeah. Wait for Big Brother, or like Eric Peters calls him, Uncle. Uncle's coming with his fatwas. It's a great way to put it. I like the way Eric Peters writes. He says, yes, these companies are trying to be benign. And many of the individuals out there involved are not malign. Nobody's bad. It is, we're not looking at bad people. We're looking at interesting people. And we're going to benignly regulate you out of existence with our bankers, with our big companies. All right, so let's talk about, finally here, the updates in this. And I thought it was interesting. We saw these articles coming out. Former Scalia clerk expects compelling evidence that's going to exonerate Kavanaugh over the next week. And what he came up with was a picture of Brett Kavanaugh looking like another kid from the 1970s. You take an old picture and you put these two guys in a suit and you give them both the same hairstyle. Yeah, they're going to all look the same. And I guess maybe they were offering this as a carrot to her since she doesn't really have any proof, doesn't have anything. He's like, do you really want to save yourself the embarrassment? You know, maybe he thought she'd really actually take the bait, but she wouldn't take the face-saving exit of saying, yeah, his face looks like the person. She said, there's zero chance that I would ever confuse him with Kavanaugh. And now she's saying that she's willing to testify without even having an FBI probe, but she's got conditions. Not going to do it until next Thursday. So there again, we're supposed to have had the vote last week. Now they're going to push it for at least another week if they get their way. And it looks like the Republicans are going to cave into this. She doesn't want to testify until next Thursday. She doesn't want Kavanaugh in the same room. And she wants to go last. She's got to tell him what she has to say. Going to let the accused go first. Isn't that kind of backwards the way that we normally do it? I mean, she's got some people who are supposed to be lawyers. You would think they would know. You would think that they would know that this is not a crime that the FBI would investigate. This is an alleged sexual assault that she's saying. And it's kind of interesting. I looked it up in Maryland because this is a state crime. It's not a federal crime that we're talking about. What is the statute of limitations on sexual assault? Well, in Maryland, if this is a childhood sexual abuse, in other words, you're under 18, then what they do is they take 7 years from the victim's 18th birthday. Well, she was allegedly 15 years old when this event took place. Well, she was 15 years old when the alleged event took place. So that would be 10 years taken off of this 35 years ago. So this is something that passed the statute of limitations 25 years ago and is not a federal crime. And they're not going to have the usual rules of evidence because you don't get to be confronted with the charges against you. You have to go tell everybody how you're totally innocent and you don't know what she's going to say. They do it that way in court for a reason, and her lawyers know that you lay out the charges against somebody, then you let them respond to those charges, bring witnesses in their defense and so on. That's the way that it ought to work. But that's not what these people are about. And so that's what she's going to try to pull. I'll just finish up with this one story about a 13-year-old boy, because this is how it looks today. 8th grader, pulled into the principal's office. They hammer him for 2 hours without his parents being there. What did you do to these girls? Why did you do it? When did you do it? Right? They don't know. What are you even talking about? They wouldn't give him any specifics. What did you do to them? Why? When? And when the parent gets there, after 2 hours of interrogation like that, with no specifics, they're handcuffing his son and putting him in the back of a police car. Well, what happened with all this? They said they were playing around, boys and girls. He put on a Snapchat avatar. He used a black Bitmoji character. One of his friends, a girl, was incensed about that, how racist that was. And then in a short period of time, she accused him of sexual crimes because he's racist. He's obviously sexist as well.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones.
Well, today is one of those days where so much happens all at once. It's hard to know where to begin, but I'm going to start with two stories. One is red linked on Drudge right now. And if you pull up Drudge Report, you'll see it there in the front and center. I'm your host, Rob Dew. Thank you for watching The War Room. We're here at Infowars.com/show. You can follow me at Dews News. But let's look at the front page of Drudge. Did we just go black? It links to a New York Times story. There it is in red. Rod Rosenstein wanted to wear wire, plot to remove Trump. It links to this New York Times story. Rod Rosenstein suggested secretly recording Trump and discussed 25th Amendment. Now, when we get back from this is a short segment. We're going to come back and do a longer segment. I'm going to play to you earlier today when this story first broke. Owen Schroyer was on the Alex Jones show, and Alex Jones came back in. He did the first hour and a couple segments into the second hour, and then he broke back in to discuss this because this is key. And it makes you wonder, Rod Rosenstein is the one who wrote the letter telling Trump to fire Comey. Because he knew Trump wanted to fire Comey anyway, and he was just, I'm going to get him to fire Comey, and then I'm going to recommend Mueller and get him bogged down in this fake Russia investigation. And now we learn Rosenstein wanted to wear a wire, and I'm going to have his statement that I'll read to you later, because he has responded to this. Now, the other big story, and we have exclusive audio we're going to play for you later in the show, bombshell, PayPal bans InfoWars after lobbying by Soros-funded group. There it is right there. Payment processor terminates agreement citing hate and intolerance. Yet, if you look up Nation of Islam, they still have theirs. The Palestinians still have theirs. Everybody gets to hate except InfoWars, and they won't even tell us what we did, although the sources inside said, well, it's your criticizing of Islam. It's your criticizing of a radical group that likes to throw gay people off buildings and treat their women as slaves. And you can't say anything against that, or you're a bigot. And yet we have these minders running around our country saying if we don't believe allegations that are made out of, appears to be whole cloth at this point, that we're the bigots as well. So they want men to shut up and sit down so they can let the agents of the New World Order take over. But we're going to have audio from the phone call, them talking to our store manager. He's like the business side manager of InfoWars. He's kind of like my counterpart, but customer service, the store, products, Tim Frugier. And he really does a lot. And he was blindsided by this while he was on vacation. But he had enough gall and enough wherewithal to record the conversation so we can play it here for you. Just to let you know, Texas is a single-party consent state. So we can record anybody as long as one party knows. Just remember that. And so they didn't tell us what we did. They didn't show an example. They just said, we did a review and it's hate. That's all you get. So when we get back from the break, we're going to go to Alex Jones and Owen Schroyer talking about this bombshell story that's up on Drudge right now. The head, front, it should have a siren on it. I don't know why it doesn't have a siren, but it needs a siren. Rod Rosenstein wanted to wear a wire, plot to remove Trump. Look at that. Look at that shifty little face, man. He's as shiftier than Adam Schiff. We got a lot more I'm going to tell you all about on the other side of this break after we play this audio. You're watching The War Room. Infowars.com/show is the free stream to send out to everybody you know.
Alex Jones with us.
Oh, we got a siren on Drudge. Let's get it back there.
We got Drudge up here?
Rosenstein wanted to wear a wire on Trump. They're all a bunch of Hillary operatives. DrudgeReport.com. Get it up right now. We got a siren.
What do we do about this, Alex? I mean, how do we stop this?
They got Soros, the Nazi collaborator, and all these criminals after us. They're all just insane. We have to move against them. Rosenstein wanted to wear a wire, plot to remove Trump. Holy Toledo. Let's click on that right now.
It's just like it gets worse every day with these people. Rosenstein.
Power man.
Pull that back up, guys. Okay. We're going to pull the story up. It's breaking. This is in the New York Times. Rosenstein suggested he secretly record Trump and discuss 25th Amendment. Oh, my gosh, folks. It was a sting operation from the entire time. But hold on. People need to understand. I need to stay focused here. This is about destroying you.
Owen. That's what I'm telling you. They've all committed so many crimes. They're like the bank robber has the kid saying, I'll blow their head off. That's why they're so dangerous. These people are crazy. Google broke their algorithm to censor. These people are out of control. That's the good news is they're going to go down. Look at that. Rosenstein, that little son of a bitch thinks he's elected. He thinks he's better than America.
How do we get that to people, though, that they understand this is about them literally controlling you. This is about them running your life. This is about them destroying the very fabric of our society so that they can get away with high crimes.
Those that think they're God secretly recording the president. This little bastard. This little Mueller dropper.
Just look at that guy trying to set up President Trump that we elected because we wanted to put America first. And
He's
that rat,
wearing Nazi tennis shoes.
I bet he sells Nazi tennis shoes too, and I bet PayPal allows him to operate.
They certainly let the Muslim Brotherhood operate on PayPal.
Oh yeah. Uh-oh, don't even say that. You'll get banned for even mentioning
Everyone needs to boycott Soros PayPal. Soros pal. When you go to PayPal, you get money to George Soros. He now owns it. America gonna put up with this crap? What you gonna do? We're fighting.
No, exactly. That's exactly it. The fact that we put up with this garbage. And Alex, they caught him. Project Veritas caught him on tape. I mean, it's like, when are we going to move? What, honestly, do the Democrats have to be raping your daughter and stabbing you in the freaking neck for you to realize who these people are? Seriously, does Eric Swalwell have to come to your house and rape your child and stab your granny in the neck just for you to see how crazy he is?
We already knew this. We already knew this, that he worked for Mueller and the Clintons and that he changed the control to him. But it was that he and these documents about to come out wanted to lead a 25th Amendment coup against the president.
Oh my gosh, this is probably all in the documents that are about to come out.
That's why they're releasing it now.
They're doing a soft release so that we don't have the real release.
Exactly. He was working to do a 25th Amendment coup against the president with Sessions. There goes your whole...
So they're like, oh yeah, well, we were going to do a coup, but they're telling us like, oh, we were doing it for you. Before we come out.
It says the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein suggested last year that he recorded President Trump in the White House to expose the chaos consuming the administration, and he discussed recruiting cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment. He was preparing a coup. He believes he's the president. To remove Mr. Trump from office from being unfit. Not Mr. Trump, but President Trump. Mr. Rosenstein made the suggestions in April 2007 when Mr. Trump's firing of James P. Comey, FBI director, plunged the White House into turmoil, which everybody said he should fire. Over the ensuing days, the president divulged classified intelligence to Russia.
You got to come back. You got to come back on air. This is too big. This is too big. This is getting totally out of control, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before I start going into this New York Times story that just broke, red linked and siren on Drudge, headline, Rosenstein suggested he secretly record Trump and discussed 25th Amendment. Now, I'm going to read this whole article in the next two segments. Rosenstein has already come out and denied this. So think about that. They can't even figure out their own coup right now. They're so out of control. They can't even get their coup against America straight because there's so many different angles and attempts to destroy this country. But before I go into this article, here's what people need to understand. This is not a political talk show talking point. This is not some political talk show narrative. This is not for your entertainment. This is not me coming up with smoke billowing out of my ears for you to laugh and point and cry and agree or whatever. This is an unelected group of people inside the government, inside unelected bureaucracies that are attempting a coup against the president of the United States. But it's not just the president of the United States. It's against you. They believe they decide this country's fate. They believe they decide who the president is. They decided it was Hillary Clinton. We, the people, decided it was Donald Trump. So they decided they were going to remove Donald Trump and stop us from having any democratic republic whatsoever. That's the story here, folks. That's what needs to sink in. This is beyond Donald Trump. This is about a deep state. This is about a shadow government. This is about crime at the highest levels, if not bordering on treason, straight up treason, being committed by a shadow government, a coup against America, where we elect a president and they say no. We put a Supreme Court justice in via our president and they say no. Are you going to let a couple elites inside a shadow government that they even admit now in the New York Times exist? Are you going to let them control your life? Are you going to let them steal your vote? That's what they're doing, folks. That's what they're doing. They are trying to steal your vote. And I'm going to tell you something here. They already rigged these elections, folks. The will of the American people is so against the deep state right now, it's not even close. If you had a fair election right now, and every single American, almost 330 million, if you had a real election, not rigged, a real election right now, 330 million Americans, I bet you 250 million Americans would support Trump and support his agenda right now. But what do you have? 20 to 30 people inside a shadow government and operating from outside, like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, trying to dictate this country using their propaganda wings of television news like CNN, MSNBC, using their propaganda wings of press like Washington Post and New York Times, using their propaganda wings of entertainment like the NFL and Hollywood to try to act like those 30 people that want to run your life are the minority when it's a tiny few elite that are trying to destroy this country and destroy our democratic republic.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
All right, there it is. That is the breaking news. So that's based on this New York Times story. Rod Rosenstein suggested secretly recording Trump and discuss the 25th Amendment. And I'm going over this article, and it's just filled with BS. Like Rosenstein was disoriented over the following days. The extreme suggestions show Mr. Rosenstein's state of mind in the disorienting days following Comey's dismissal. He wrote the frickin' memo to have Comey dismissed. This is probably... Mr. Rosenstein disputed the account. The New York Times story is inaccurate and factually incorrect. Yeah. So it looks like he might have gotten, the Justice Department got these notes from Andrew McCabe when he turned his stuff over, and then somebody leaked them out. Of course, it's all done by anonymous sources. It's all done by anonymous. And maybe this was planted by the New York Times, this whole story. We could look at it this way. Maybe they planted it so Trump would fire Rosenstein, and then they could say, oh, he's not fit. He doesn't like anybody questioning him. He doesn't like this. 25th Amendment, 25th Amendment. So it could be another case of one of these jerk-offs falling on their sword in order to get the president, because that's the one thing they don't like. They don't like Trump. They don't like what he's doing. They don't like 4% economic growth. They don't like low unemployment. They don't like record low black unemployment or Hispanic unemployment. They don't like any of it. So they want to shut you up, shut us up. All right, we'll be back after this. Harrison Smith's going to be joining me talking about Ted Cruz Beto debate tonight, which Owen Schroyer is going to be at. And I have a statement here from Andrew McCabe. So on the day that PayPal, one of the largest online transaction services, bans us from their money transaction capabilities, we get this breaking news about Rod Rosenstein. And already, amazing how everybody's now jumping to cover their butts, right? Join with Harrison Smith. So we got this out of the Daily Mail. Breaking news, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who looks like he probably liked to twist the heads off kittens when he was a young person. Just me. Weird looking guy. Looks disingenuous. My personal opinion. Report that he discussed using the 25th Amendment to remove Trump and even explored covertly recording him to gather evidence. Ooh. Now, nobody's denying that he said this, but they're saying, oh, he was being sarcastic.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, guys, what if I put on a wire and go in to talk to Trump about the 25th Amendment, huh?
Wouldn't that be hilarious?
That'd be hilarious. Now, guys, if this leaks out, I'm being sarcastic, okay? I'm being sarcastic.
Right, wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's how that works,
like
Mr.
a freaking
Rosenstein.
Muppet. The Washington Post, too, cited a source that said Rosenstein's comment was biting but unserious. What do these guys do? When are they serious? When are they not serious?
Oh, it's up to them.
Oh, so when they come to question you about BS Russia collusion, it's all serious. But when we're talking about wiretapping ourselves to go entrap the president,
that's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's all a big joke.
It's a prank, bro. It's a prank.
When I text you about the insurance plan,
yeah,
you know,
that's prank.
Just joking. Just kidding.
It's a prank.
It's a little friendly banter. No, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Fox reported that acting FBI Director McCabe and Lisa Page were in the room when Rosenstein raised the subject, the joke, the prank, bro. Right there. They were all there.
It's kind of like when Hillary Clinton jokes about drone striking Julian Assange.
Or joking about we came, we saw, we died.
Yeah, it's all fun and games. It's all funny. Undoing our democracy.
Exactly. And so via Twitter, we get this. This is from Melissa Schwartz, put out McCabe's statement. Please see the below statement for the record from Michael Bromwich, counsel for Andrew McCabe. This is the first and only statement for the record. Will be our only comment today. Andrew McCabe drafted memos to memorialize significant discussions he had with high-level officials and preserve them so he'd have an accurate contemporaneous record of those discussions. When he was interviewed by the special counsel more than a year ago, he gave all the memos, classified and unclassified, to the special counsel's office. A set of those memos remained at the FBI at the time of his departure in late 2018. He has no knowledge of how any member of the media obtained those memos.
He didn't send it to his lawyer friend from Colombia? So that's the Comey maneuver.
Well, that's what Comey would do, yeah. McCabe probably has somebody else on the inside. Maybe he has somebody still on the inside. Who knows? I'm sure there is.
There were questions about this when McCabe was fired, if he maybe had some information that they were going to try to leverage, against maybe criminal prosecution against McCabe. So it seems like maybe this is coming out. But I think really the main thrust here is that, obviously Rod Rosenstein wasn't joking. I think we can just write that off out of hand. That's just an excuse. Hilarious. Yeah, just recording the president of the United States to try to kick him out. But the main thrust is the fact that there was no actual legitimate concern for his mental well-being. They just saw the 25th Amendment
as a way to do it.
The wedge, as the tool, as the leverage that they needed, or the tool that they needed or could use in order to oust him. There was no like, guys, this president, I'm worried that he's actually kind of crazy. Maybe we need to start thinking about the 25th Amendment. That was never the case. It was, well, we can use the 25th Amendment to get rid of this president, right? There was no, and this is the liberal playbook. It's almost the same thing as the idea of just all these migrants coming across and claiming asylum, right? Because asylum is this sort of special thing that our country does where, I think it started around World War II when you had all these Jews fleeing from Germany. And it was like, okay, they're going to get hindered by our normal immigration processes. So we're going to have to suspend those temporarily and let them come in because they need asylum. So it's this sort of special dispensation that they get, or that anybody in trouble gets.
That they open.
Right. That's special. That is useful.
They brought a lot of people back after Vietnam.
Right.
Cambodians, Laotians.
It's useful. It's necessary. It actually saves people's lives. Well, now it's just being completely taken advantage of. It's just anybody can claim asylum if, your husband was beating you in Colombia or whatever it is. And so it's been just completely perverted, essentially, to where now if there are actually people who are actually able to claim asylum legitimately, they're being hindered by all these people who are claiming it illegitimately. So to bring it back to the 25th Amendment, the 25th Amendment was this thing put in place to go, hey guys, we don't have a fallback plan in case something happens, the president gets dementia, something happens, we need something in place, God forbid that we're able to remove him legally and we don't have a constitutional crisis. So they put in this very, important amendment saying that here's the way that we do it. And now, of course, that's just being used as a tool to advance their political agenda with no actual concern as to the actual application of this 25th Amendment. So, it's just the liberal. They'll just do whatever they need to do to win their short-term victory without any consideration as to the long-term effects of this, as to the crying wolf effect, as to maybe the next time that we actually have a president in office that actually is going through dementia or going crazy and they need to invoke the 25th Amendment. Well, how are we going to know that that's the case when,
We've seen it been used in a BS situation before?
Exactly. It's just, they're just willing to use and abuse anything that they think they can in order to achieve their short-term political goals.
Yeah, it's really an amazing abuse of power that we're seeing. I think it was Roger Stone. He said, how many people does he have to get rid of in the Department of Justice? He said the top 5. I think top 10. And then you look, and then you hire some people back if they were good, but you got to get rid of the top 10 people. I think you have encourage more James O'Keefe stings. Anybody caught in one of these stings, get them out of there. Go let them find another job. They don't have to be criminally prosecuted, but you don't get to work for the federal government if you're openly saying, I'm not going to do what my boss says.
How long would I work at InfoWars if I was caught scheming to secretly record Alex Jones to try to entrap him somehow? It's like, no, you should be gone. You should be gone immediately as soon as this is out.
Even if it is a joke, you should be making those types of jokes, bro.
No, it's completely wrong.
I wonder it's different because it's Department of Justice, but I wonder if you're able to tape conversations like that legally. Is it a single party consent state? See, but those laws only apply to normal people,
right?
Not creatures like Rod Rosenstein, who looks like he likes to twist the heads off baby kitties when he was a young boy. Along with, he probably burnt down some things. He just looks, and it's only those type of people that like to get in those positions of power because they really have no self-worth themselves. And they're like, I have to control what everybody does. Right. Just disgusting looking creatures. He's shown himself to be disingenuous over and over again. He's shown himself to not be working with the president and his agenda. He should be gone. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. He should be gone. Sessions should be gone. Really, we need to clean house. Hopefully, Trump's just waiting for the midterms to get through because obviously there's going to be a lot of political fallout to these types of firings. Hopefully we can just make it through the midterms, get some wins there, and get Trump that solid foundational base that he can use to really clean house and get his agenda moving.
And we're going to talk about that next, coming up with the first debate between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke is tonight. Owen Schroyer will be on the scene, and we'll have more information about that right across from the break here at Infowars.com/show is the free stream to send out. Well, Hillary Clinton said the other day, if the GOP wins in the midterms, Trump is going to wholesale fire people, which I think he should do either way.
Yeah.
Stop playing around with these people. They're not interested in working with you. They're not interested in trying to turn the country around. They're interested in sucking off the American people. So that leads us to today's debate. Because if Beto O'Rourke wins, that'll be the first time in a long time a Democratic senator has come from the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the first of his 3 debates tonight. We were seeing polls just a couple days ago. Oh, they're dead even. Oh, he's a few points ahead. And, now it's like, no. Those were fake debates. I think it's the Dallas, the Morning News or the Observer. I don't know. They say, they were showing day after day, they were showing a 9-point lead for Ted Cruz. And then all of a sudden this poll comes out and it's 47-45 O'Rourke leading.
Heaven forbid.
Of course, you got to go look at the results of these. See, we interviewed 85% Democrats.
Right.
And
we did a poll. We did a poll in downtown Austin, and it turns out people love Beto. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I would agree. Yeah, and in downtown Austin, that would happen.
Well, no, but Beto has a lot of support, or at least a lot of visible support compared to Ted Cruz, especially around Austin with the signs and people wearing T-shirts and all this stuff. And honestly, I'm worried about this. I don't think if I was a betting man, I wouldn't put money on him winning the Senate seat. However, if he does win the Senate seat, I would put big money on him being a major contender in 2020. This guy he's just white Obama. He just sounds exactly like him. He talks exactly like him. It's the same platitudes. It's the same.
He flaunts the rules like Obama.
Oh, just completely. He's changed his name 3 or 4 times throughout his life. He just sort of says whatever he needs to at that particular time. He's associated with all of these kind of shadowy big money backers that nobody in the media is interested in
Hollywood.
Exploring at all. Oh yeah, Hollywood. The guy is a carpetbagger to a T. He's like a definitional carpetbagger. He goes to California to campaign for a Senate seat in Texas.
Yeah.
So his whole thing is I don't take any money from PACs. I take no money from PACs at all. I'm all about representing the people.
The Hollywood PAC doesn't count.
Right. That doesn't count. And when I say people,
the elitist Californian PAC doesn't count.
I don't necessarily mean Texas people. I mean, Californians and New Yorkers and, in particular Texas people. The Beto is infuriating to me because specifically because I have so many friends that are liberals that just every day they're posting all this stuff on Facebook and everywhere else, just like, we got to get out there, we got to win, we got to get Beto elected. And it's like, have y'all done the just bare minimum research? Have you just Googled his name, or have you just sat back and just like absorbed what Stephen Colbert and Ellen are telling you. Like,
well, I think they like a lot of the things he says. Do we have the gun clip? Let's pull what he says about AR-15s. I think they love to hear stuff like this. This is probably what your friends really like. They're like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, they definitely like a lot of the ideas he pushes, but a lot of the ideas he pushes are completely groundless and baseless and nonsensical. Like getting rid of AR-15s. You're going to get rid of one particular type of gun. It's just clearly you don't understand guns if you think getting rid of one brand or style of gun is at all going to be effective in combating gun crime. It's so nothing about him to me makes sense, because he just says the most blatant or just sort of simple platitudes about whatever it is that he's talking about, and the whole media is just Beto's blowing up the internet. Get him on Ellen. Get him on Stephen Colbert.
All right, we have the gun clip. Let's go to it.
Pushing for something different.
I think banning bump stocks makes a lot of sense. As I just shared, I don't know that we should raise the age for buying an AR-15. I just don't think we should be selling AR-15s in this country. That weapon was designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to kill people as effectively and efficiently as possible on the battlefield. It has no place in our streets, in our schools, in our concerts, in our movie theaters. We should not be selling that to civilians. And in terms of arming teachers, I've been listening to teachers in Texas, and they want to focus on teaching the kids in their classrooms, not carrying weapons. When police officers have a 31% hit rate, meaning that 69% of the time they don't hit their intended target, those teachers are telling me they're not sure that they're going to be able to be that much more accurate or successful. I don't know that arming teachers is the solution. I think securing those schools, making sure that all doors are locked and locked from the inside, restricting entrance and exit, all of those things make a lot more sense, in addition to getting smart on gun safety, universal background checks, banning the sale of assault weapons, and allowing the CDC to study gun violence in this country so that we can make the best informed policies and decisions for the...
What a disgusting creature.
See, AR-15s are built to kill people, unlike other guns.
And he talks about them being made for the battlefield. Those guns aren't used on the battlefield.
No.
They use full autos on the battlefield, Beto. Sorry.
What does Ted Nugent say? He says no army in the history of the world would be so irresponsible to send out their soldiers with AR-15s. No, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And okay, the number one thing he always says, he says it every interview I've ever seen, it's usually the first thing he says: I take no money from PACs, zero, nothing. I take no money from PACs. I'm here to represent the people. Just go to Open Secrets. He takes tens of thousands of dollars from PACs. The number one contributor on the list is a PAC.
But he said he doesn't take money.
It's because he's a liar. Because he's lying. He's just not. I love this. So this is from PolitiFact. It's from last year, before he really started doubling down on this. So they were still okay with him sort of fudging things. So Beto O'Rourke claims near uniqueness in not taking corporate or PAC contributions. And just going through this article, you can see his claims just degenerate with every sort of, as they look into it, the more clear it becomes that he's completely full of it. So he says, I'm one of 2 members of Congress that takes no corporate cash, no political action money, and I don't want you to be worried that when I'm taking a vote or making a decision or writing a bill or looking at an amendment, that I'm listening to anybody but you. Okay, so it goes from I'm one of 2 members out of Congress who takes no political action money. And then he says, well, what I should have said is that there are only 2 members of Congress who don't take PAC money and also don't have a leadership PAC. See, that's what I actually meant. But then later he says, Beto O'Rourke wrote, well, there are 4 members of Congress who don't take PAC money in the last cycle. But then you go to Open Secrets and you find out that Cruz has raised $1.9 million from PACs, which is about 2% of all the money he's raised in his political career, whereas O'Rourke has raised $297,000 in PAC contributions, which is 5% of his contributions of his political. So out of a percentage of all the political contributions to O'Rourke compared to compared to Cruz, O'Rourke's taken double the amount of PAC money in terms of percentage, more than double, almost triple actually, in fact. So you can just see, then finally he says, okay, starting with this election cycle, I plan on no longer taking PAC. It just collapses more and more. And then it says, if you can go to the Open Secrets and FEC filings and see that he didn't bank any PAC contributions in 2016 or for the first months of his Senate bid, But this proved a slog to confirm because PAC names repeatedly appear up in O'Rourke contribution reports. Isn't that funny? He doesn't take any money, and yet PACs continually reappear in his
and he's got the mainstream
reports.
Media behind him going,
Oh,
it's
God.
officially a toss-up. It's too close to call. This is so they could actually steal it in an election. If they have it within 2 to 3 percentage points, it could be a, man, he just pulled out an eager. He won it by 10,000 votes from the central part of Austin, Texas. That's what brought Beto O'Rourke the win, because they have to implant these guys in here because they can't do it fair and square. I think those AR-15 comments, hopefully Ted Cruz is putting those in ads and letting people know. And look, I'm no big fan of Ted Cruz, but you know what? Right. At least he had the decency to talk to Alex Jones. He knew who he was. He even defended him on Twitter, sort of, tongue-in-cheek, but saying, look, Facebook shouldn't be telling people what they can and can't write, or who can and can't post on their platform, especially when they're picking and choosing mostly conservatives to ban. This guy would love to see conservatives banned. This is the kind of trash we don't need in our elected offices. So we'll be right back after this. And I'm going to play that audio for you from PayPal. So back when Infowars.com/app had a link to our iPhone app, I think we got as high as number 3. The app right before that was called Newsbreak. And I remember looking at that, oh, it's pretty cool. Let's get that app. I downloaded that app. And as we were going to break, or during break, it popped up, 50 Cent shot and killed in Morvan, 2 others injured. And I'm like, where's Morvan? I've never heard about this. One of our guys said it was from Trinidad and Tobago, although it could be in Spain. It said 3 men have been rushed to the Port of Spain General Hospital. And they say his real name, known as 37-year-old Randy Woods, okay? All right, that's not 50 Cent's real name. It is actually Curtis James Jackson III, right there. Oh, I'll catch you guys. There it is. Curtis James Jackson III. So, but you see that headline, 50 Cent shot and killed, Twitter's going to be freaking out that 50 Cent is dead. And it's just not happening. The reports of his demise are greatly exaggerated. But it just is a little, that's going to be blowing up. 50 Cent's dead. 50 Cent's dead. 50 Cent's dead. He's been shot and killed. No, he's not. It's just another different fake news, probably propagated by the Russians. Or it could be a PR firm. I think he does have an album coming out sometime this year. If it hasn't already came out, it's like called Street King or something like that. I just read. So they said, is it dropping in 2018 or not? And you do find when celebrities have kind of outlived their usefulness, and I'll just say Burt Reynolds died of a heart attack. The memoir of Sally Field comes out right after he dies, and a lot of it's about Burt Reynolds.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
Just a happy coincidence. Sad coincidence.
Who knew? And in there, she talks kind of, he was kind of controlled.
Well,
she says.
I would have.
He probably wouldn't have lasted a day at one of Ford's high school parties, though.
Yeah.
Christine Ford's parties. But let's continue on. I also want to get to this in this segment from Mr. Paul Joseph Watson. Bombshell. PayPal bans InfoWars after lobbying by Soros-funded group. Payment processor PayPal has banned InfoWars and what represents nothing less than a political ploy to financially sabotage an influential media outlet just weeks before the midterm elections. Could you say election meddling? And what do they say? Oh, after a comprehensive review of the InfoWars site, you violated our acceptable use policy. You promote hate and discriminatory tolerance against certain communities and religions.
What does that mean?
The nebulous definition of hate.
Mm-hmm.
Hate speech. Hate. I wonder if it's coincidence that George Soros is the 9th largest holder of PayPal stock, above eBay.
That's coincidence. Just pure coincidence.
I wonder if it's any coincidence that it's after Jared Holt, sorry. Jared Dolt from Right Wing Watch published Alex Jones serviced by PayPal despite obvious terms of service violations. Or the Washington Post, as Alex Jones rails against big tech, his InfoWars stores still thrive online.
Yeah, how dare he sell products to customers that want to buy them? Somebody stop him. We can't let this travesty continue.
And it goes on and on. Guys, let's roll that video.
Should we set it up first?
Yes, I understand. Again, I'm just the messenger.
Hello?
Hey, Tim.
Hey.
Hey, sorry about that. I wasn't able to hang up on that other call.
No, you're fine.
So, hey, I was able to track down Heidi and Steve, who I think I was able to patch into this call. These are the folks that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
So, again, apologies for calling you at this hour on vacation, but I was able to track them down today rather than tomorrow.
Great.
Hey, Greg, it's Heidi. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
We do have Steve on. He's also a colleague of mine. We just wanted to talk to you. We apologize that you're on vacation, but we have done a comprehensive review of the InfoWars site, including the store and the content posted on both the InfoWars and the Personal Planet website. And PayPal has identified that it violates our acceptable use policy. So we are notifying you of our decision to cease processing payments for InfoWars and Prison Planet.
So how...
We wanted to let you know specific...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, just a few more things. I just wanted to let you know that as we undertook a really extensive review of the site, we did find instances that promoted hate and discriminatory intolerance against certain communities and religions, which in itself is in violation of the prohibited activities set out in our policy. So we want to provide you with 10 business days to transition your payment processing to another service provider. And at the end of the transition period, PayPal will place a permanent limitation on your account, which cannot be appealed. So during the transition period, we just ask that you continue with your normal process for reviewing and decisioning chargebacks or by your complaint liabilities in a timely fashion.
Okay.
So in the transition time, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to process this here. So you're lumping in the news website with the store website. Is that, am I getting this correct?
We are, that is correct.
So basically as an organization, even though we've been in business and have made tons of money for PayPal, y'all are jumping. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. Okay. I really would appreciate this in writing as a professional courtesy.
Of course. Oh, absolutely. Of course, Tim. You'll actually get that email. We'll send that email to the email address we have on file with PayPal, and you'll receive that within an hour.
Okay, and can I ask, is this just what department is making this decision?
You know what? It'll all be really clear. There's a little bit more information you'll get in the email. So it'll all be clear. It'll all be spelled out in the email you will receive shortly after this call.
And there's no way I can appeal this whatsoever. Is that correct?
There is not. That is correct.
Wow.
We do want you to know that in the transition, we will work with you and, help you in any ways that we can. And you will continue working with your relationship team through that transition process. So anything you need for the transitioning, just let us know.
You're so nice. Y'all were just courting me, trying to get my business for Braintree. And now all of a sudden, I'm just curious why things have changed all of a sudden.
Well, PayPal regularly does assess the activity of our websites to our acceptable use policy. And we did find that you were in violation of that. So things were just uncovered. And we understand that we were in that process, but we do reviews independently, and that was part of that.
When Soros minions tell us to.
Interesting. Alrighty, yeah, I would very much appreciate this written because, yeah, I'm gonna. Obviously, this is going to be a big deal. So.
Of course, yeah, we'll get that email over to you just as quickly as we can, just right after this call.
Okay, yeah, and what was your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is Heidi.
Heidi, and the other gentleman on the line.
Steve.
Steve, okay. And what is your title there? at PayPal?
You know, just with the company practice at this point, I'm just the messenger. So the company practices in these situations is just to give you the information that we have, and you'll receive more information by email.
But you're calling me, telling me you're terminating our relationship of more
right,
than 15 years.
That's why we back it out of email. That's why we'll back up everything. Yes, I understand. Again, I'm just a messenger, and I just have, so much that I'm aware of. So we'll send everything to you in writing in your email shortly after the call.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, there it is, guys. There it is. That's exclusive email or audio from PayPal. Here we have Glenn Bolton at The Real Media just tweeted out, I have just closed my PayPal account. I have to bring this up close to my bad eyes to read what he said. It has come to my attention that PayPal has decided to join the kangaroo court of opinion and ban Alex Jones from your platform. Whether you agree or disagree, what Alex may or may not have said regarding the Sandy Hook incident, for you to take this action when he has not even had a chance to argue his case in a court of law, it's unacceptable. He's an innocent man until proven guilty in a court of law. So with this in mind, I would now like to close my accounts, both personal and business, in full. Immediately after receiving this email, I will have no part in your company being judge and jury in a case that is yet to be settled. Good day. So there it is. That's just one. Hashtag dump PayPal. Looks like that movement's going to start now, gaining traction. Thank you for joining me, Harrison. Roger Stone is up this next hour. You can join us, Infowars.com/show. What do you think about that, huh? Oh, so I threw that to, as we were going to break, I said, what do you think of that, Harrison? And I knew we were running out of time. We had like 2 seconds left. And he of course, he said something that was not for television, not suitable for a television audience. Had something to do with effing Soros. I mean, there you go. A Nazi collaborator gets to say who in this country can have financial transactions. What do you think of that? What do you think of that? You think that's cool? You think a Nazi collaborator who went around in his preteen years with his guardian confiscating the property of his fellow Jews. Now he gets to say who can buy and sell in America. Literally mark of the beast level. But I want to read a little bit of this article, and Roger Stone's going to be coming up in the next segment to talk about the slow walking of the FISA document. I love that too. I'm just the messenger. I'm just an up-talker named Heidi. The company claimed that InfoWars violated PayPal's acceptable use policy, promoted hate and discriminatory intolerance against certain communities and religions. Yeah, we don't agree with throwing gays off roofs and treating women as slaves. We just don't agree with that. I'm sorry. Yeah, call us hateful, call us intolerant. Of course, no specific examples were officially provided to back up this claim, which relies on the nebulous definition of hate, which is so vague that virtually anything could qualify. Off the record, though, InfoWars was told that criticisms of Islam in opposition to transgenderism being taught to preschool children, we should say, kindergarten level children, first grade children, second grade children, small children in schools were 2 examples of hate. Because we don't agree with that? The ban was instituted to fight, despite InfoWarsStore.com containing no political content whatsoever, emphasizing how the decision was a broader attack on the InfoWars platform. PayPal representatives said they were giving InfoWars 10 days to switch processors, after which all services would be terminated. Hashtag dump PayPal. I will be closing my account in the next day or so and taking screenshots of it because I'm not going to put up with this. And you shouldn't either. We shouldn't have to put up with this. PayPal's going around buying up other payment processors. They're going to want to be the Amazon of online payment processing. They're going to make it to where you can't buy or sell on the internet eventually if you let them do this crap. The ban was handed down just weeks after George Soros-funded group Right Wing Watch and Jared Dolt published an article demanding that PayPal terminate its agreement with InfoWars for egregious violations of the platform's own terms of service. Hey, Right Wing Watch hates us. We should terminate they violate terms of service. They hate anybody has a brain and wants to have free speech. RWW routinely violates copyright by, I wanted to say something about that, but I'm not going to right now, by uploading entire sections of other people's videos to YouTube without any pretense of fair use. Yet the group's channel has not been deleted. That's right, because different rules for the simpering lispers. RWW is owned by People for the American Way, which is funded by George Soros' Open Society Initiative. Oh, what a freaking surprise. In addition, Jeff Bezos on Washington Post published an article less than 2 weeks ago that served as a dog whistle for PayPal to ban InfoWars. Well, now we have our marching orders. We can ban them. Send Heidi in to do it. She's the messenger. The article then specifically mentions how InfoWars uses PayPal to generate a high rate of sales. And you heard on the tape, they were actively courting us for their new brain trust. Oh, want to work with us on brain trust? We want you guys to work with us. And then the word came down from Soros that, no, you don't get to work with InfoWars. They're bad. They don't follow the script. They don't listen to the corporate overlords. Therefore, they don't get to buy. They don't get to sell. They don't get to talk. They get nothing unless you speak up, unless you vote with your dollars. That is how it's going to keep going. All right, we'll be right back with Roger Stone. Infowars.com/show is the free stream to send out to everybody who wants censored information. All right, Roger Stone is joining us, and I know he wanted to get on and talk about this Beto Ted Cruz rally tonight. No, I'm kidding. And I don't want to talk about it anymore either, because, I mean, to me, they're both fake Hispanics as far as I'm concerned, even though Ted Cruz is more of a Hispanic than Beto. What is interesting, though, is that we had they're talking about how Beto's so close, but in this Democratic red district, it turned blue. Or no, it was a blue district, it turned red after 139 years. Republicans elected Pete Flores over Pete Gallego, the Battle of the Petes, the Peter Battle in San Antonio. Anyway, let's bring on Roger Stone. We're going to talk about this FISA warrant right now, which, of course, is being slow-walked through. Of course, they're saying, oh, you have to reconsider, President. Oh, and then New York Times launches this little salvo to try and pad the information that's going to come out, to muddy the waters, to just invent more BS. Roger, what the hell is going on in D.C. right now?
You know, Rob, it's almost hard to know where to start. I guess we'll start with the FISA material, because that really speaks to the heart of the Rosenstein matter and explains why Donald Trump is such an incredible threat to the deep state. The president has the unilateral authority to order any information in the possession of the executive branch of government to be declassified and released to the public. The president has ordered the release of all of the information surrounding the illicit use of FISA warrants by the Obama administration to justify the spying on the Trump campaign. But the intelligence services essentially countermand the president's order and continue to insist on redaction of some of that information. Their claim of national security is bogus. What they're covering is their own ass. They're covering the use of the power and authority of the state for strictly political purposes. Now you have a number of our allies who have expressed concern to the president about his order to redact this information. That means that somebody at the State Department called them and said, file an objection to this redaction. We can't let our entire fraudulent scam be exposed. The president should ignore all of these efforts to talk him out of what is the correct course. Now, what are his options? Well, the president has the authority to order the seizing and release of this information. The idea of going to the courts is ridiculous. The courts are a co-equal branch of government. If the intelligence services ignore an order from the president, they would certainly ignore an order from the courts. Bottom line, do what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had to do. Order Army intelligence in this case to seize the information and release it to the public as per the president's order. Now, this comes, of course, on the heel of incredible news that Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, proposed wearing a wire in a meeting with the President of the United States to set him up for removal under the 25th Amendment. This blows my mind. We here at InfoWars were the first media outlet in the country to report on the intended plan to use the 25th Amendment to remove the president. If President Trump does not fire this weasel Rosenstein now, when, Rob, will he do so?
Exactly. And now the press is jumping behind Rosenstein saying, oh, it was sarcastic. It was a prank. He really didn't mean it. It was a joke. Because that's what I do. You know, if I'm in the cabinet with or with a bunch of FBI and DOJ officials, maybe I'll wear a wire and go talk to the president about invoking the 25th Amendment and what he would do. Does that sound like a joke in any universe?
Actually, in the New York Times piece, Rosenstein is specifically asked whether he's joking, and he says, no, he's deadly serious. What he is, Rob, is busted. That's what he is. The background to this is pretty clear. Rosenstein wrote the memo to the president telling him how and why to fire James Comey, the disgraced FBI director. But Weasel Rosenstein did not expect the president to make that memo public, therefore assuming that his friend Comey would never know that Rosenstein had backstabbed him. Now, of course, the world knows that. According to the New York Times, Rosenstein was angry and distraught, worried about his reputation. Dude, your reputation? You have no reputation other than as a criminal who seeks to cover up the misdeeds of the Obama Justice Department in the 2016 election. This needs to come to a head, Rob. Rosenstein, as you know, is the only individual with oversight on the out-of-control investigation by Robert Mueller, a speeding bullet that is still heading for Donald J. Trump.
And you have the New York Times article saying, oh, Rosenstein was disoriented in the days that Comey was fired, even though he wrote the memo to fire Comey and recommending it. So this whole article is filled with BS, but it really makes me wonder. And then you have CNN, Vox saying Trump just walked away from his controversial order to declassify Russian investigation information. First of all, none of the Republican Party, I played clips of Louis Gohmert and Devin Nunes all saying it's a great idea. We need transparency. Oh no, but that's controversial to have transparency. And he didn't even say that. All he said was he asked the inspector general to review the documents at an expedited basis. And then he says, in the end, I can always declassify. He said this in 2 tweets. If it proves necessary, speed is very important to me and everyone. So his final word was, in the end, I can declassify it if I want to. I'm only doing this to kind of be a nice guy. He needs to stop being a nice guy, though. He needs to just say, listen, I want it reviewed now. Do I need to come over there and get it? Hey, I'm going to come over there and take photos of it and tweet it out. Nobody could stop him. He's the president. He has the ability to do this.
Well, and I'm sure he wants to look at the actual language that they wish to redact and see if it has anything to do with our foreign affairs or whether it has to do with domestic politics. I think we know the answer to that question. Meanwhile,
all the clips I've seen is they're saying, oh, no, these guys are covering their butts. They're trying to cover their butts. And this New York Times article is just another muddying the waters, throwing smoke in the air to try to get people off the real contents of this FISA memo and these texts. I can't wait to see these texts.
Meanwhile, former InfoWars Bureau Chief Jerry Corsi is right now, as we speak, in front of Robert Mueller's grand jury. Now, Corsi had an antecedent relationship with candidate Trump long before I met him in the beginning of 2015. He was talking to Trump, as far as I know, as early as 2011, met with him several times during 2016. Perhaps that is what the grand jury wishes to discuss with him. But sources also tell me that a number of the questions Corsi is being asked relate to, guess who? Alex Jones. This is really simple. If Jerry Corsi tells the truth to the grand jury, it would not only be exonerating for me, but he is in possession of no negative or information that would reflect badly on Alex Jones. I certainly hope, Rob, that he tells the truth.
And Corsi's been a guest here for many years. He's actually worked with us for a time, being up in D.C. And I remember we were in D.C. at our one of our gatherings that we had there at the Mayflower Hotel. He got up and said the last 2 years working with InfoWars have been the best 2 years of his life, just meeting all the people involved with us and really becoming part of the InfoWars family. So I don't see Corsi doing anything except telling the truth. And I mean, we don't have anything to worry about. We don't have anything to hide, except they just want to shut us up. They want to keep us from talking. I played last main segment in the last hour, the audio of PayPal basically taking away our service, Roger Stone. And when we get back, I want to get your reaction to that. But don't forget, they can silence us if you don't do your part, which is spread the links, spread the articles, hand share them if you have to, and go to InfoWarsStore.com where we have 25% off Survival Shield X2 for a limited time. Also 50% off Super Male, Super V Male Vitality. Those are the last runs of those two products, those three products actually. Also 40% off BioTrue Selenium. It works great with X2. You need to support the InfoWar or we won't be here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short message.
I'm disappointed in the Attorney General for many reasons, and you understand that.
The iceberg of evidence surrounding the fabrication of the Nothing Burger Russia investigation is coming into view, and the mates on this Titanic ship of fools are beginning to brace for the collision.
The president is allowed to declassify materials. He does have that authority. So how do you square that?
Well, the president has the authority to do a lot of things. Doesn't mean if he does it, it's the right thing to do, such as going to war, pushing a button that is going to launch missiles.
Nellie Orr, the wife of Justice Department official Bruce Orr, is refusing to appear before Congress for a closed-door hearing. Orr, who worked for Fusion GPS, the firm behind the Steele dossier, was scheduled to appear for interviews during a joint session with the House Judiciary and House Oversight and Government Reform Committees. But two congressional sources said that she is not cooperating with the requests and will have to be subpoenaed to compel her appearance. The sources also said that former FBI General Counsel James Baker is not cooperating with the committee's request.
It's only 20 pages. All you have to do is make a copy and send it out, put it on the internet. So there, at this point, I do not understand why this hasn't been declassified. The president said, declassify immediately without redactions.
Is there any national security concerns?
No, and we've heard this same story over and over again.
Looks like Devin Nunes and Bob Goodlatte, who runs the Judiciary Committee, they've reviewed the documents that the president is seeking to declassify, and they know there's nothing there worth protecting in terms of protecting our national security. And the media who's complaining about the release of this information in this very scandal was happily reporting classified information that was rightly classified, and the release of which would harm national security and potentially harm citizens.
Wait, so you're saying that when journalists tell us that their job is to make sure we have less information, know less about what our government is doing, they're in on the scam themselves?
Not only that, they're aware of government officials who may have broken the law and leaking classified
information. So their allegiance is to bureaucrats and not their viewers or readers, is what you're saying.
That's right. You know, the president is, in his genius way, bypassing the media by releasing the documents in a lawful way to the American people, as opposed through the illegal leaks where classified information isn't protected. That's the traditional Washington
very quick,
way.
Since you've been doing this for so long, have you ever seen the media come out on the side of secrecy and against the public's right to know?
Well, in this case, they have.
The DOJ and the FBI are doing everything they can to slow the process to declassify the FISA documents to the point of stopping it in its tracks, redacting portions of the pages, rendering them mostly unreadable.
Well, every time we have seen something be unredacted, it wasn't about sources and methods. We want to protect those, but every time it has been self-serving to protect the people who have been violating federal regulations, violating protocol of the Justice Department, or violating the law. And so it's kind of calling wolf one too many times to be saying, gee, this is terrible. No, it's transparency, and the American people need to see just how bad the DOJ was weaponized and was utilized. And, you know, you hear people like Brennan and others, my word, the damage that man has done. And then Comey, for heaven's sakes, McCabe, Strzok, all these people, they need to have their day in court where they're on the other side of the courtroom than where they're used to. We know Brennan and some of the others had, you know, let's see, was it Brennan voted for communists? I did not know until last week I saw an article from 2003 where Comey was bragging that, yeah, I was a communist until I became whatever I am now. I never heard that. Call me the communist. How about who knew that? It's amazing.
The Democrats have long used FISA applications to not only generate a spy campaign on a presidential nominee, but also to spy on journalists. Town Hall reported the Obama Department of Justice has spied on journalists. They tracked James Rosen, formerly of Fox News. They seized the phone records from Associated Press reporters. Now the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University and Freedom of the Press Foundation have released documents showing that in 2015, the Obama DOJ had secret rules to target journalists under FISA. Come hell or high water, the deep state's dirty little FISA secret will come out.
Be patient, be alert, and God bless you.
John Bound reporting.
You know, I wish the president would just do more videos on Twitter. Just go live on Twitter and talk to the people, especially about this FISA thing, because he says something to the inspector general and it gets turned into, oh, he's walking away. He's not doing it. You know, and I love these John Bound reports because he takes all the pieces that I've been talking about for the last 3 days and puts them all together in a nice 5-minute package. So be sure and get that report out. Guys, when you find the article, pull that up so I can tell people what the article name is. I believe it's still on the front page of InfoWars. But Roger, why is it that the Republicans, and not all of them, but some of them, seem to want to see transparency, and yet it doesn't happen time after time again? We get stymied by this political, bureaucratic red tape.
Well, because the truth is, the Republican leadership in both houses remains opposed to the presidency of Donald J. Trump. There's only a small band of free thinkers, Matt Gaetz, Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes, Lee Selden, Mark Meadows, and a handful of others who've had the courage to pursue this fight. What's ironic, of course, is that Rosenstein proposes removing the president under Amendment 25 of the Constitution, the 25th Amendment, because he's not malleable, because he won't do as he's told. That is precisely their problem. Look,
he goes off script. They always say he goes off script. We give him a script and he doesn't talk the script. They hate that.
Because Donald Trump is not scriptable. Look, the only thing that's predictable about Donald Trump is that he's entirely unpredictable. He marches to his own drummer. He is his own man. He's not owned by anybody, not the big defense contractors, not Wall Street, no one. He answers to no one other than the American people. And that drives the special interests and the deep state completely insane.
It definitely does. Remember last time they started this 25th Amendment BS, he went and had his Surgeon General, or not his Surgeon General, his